Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live chat, Racial Equity, a Call to Action. My name is Liv Alanis Myers, and I am the Outreach and Communications Manager here at the OHRE. And now I would like to introduce our first special guest, Dr. Denise Boston, Equity and Restorative Practices Manager for the Office of Human Rights and Equity.
Hi, welcome everyone. Really happy that you could join us this evening. We have a wonderful conversation ready for you, and it's an interactive conversation where you have a chance to ask questions. And I can tell you a lot about the work that we're doing here in the Office of Equity, in the unit of Equity and Restorative Practices, in the Office of um, Human Rights and Equity. So, welcome. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Boston, could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Wow. I came to Howard County in the 1970s. So my parents migrated here from Baltimore. I think a lot of people know my story. And I'm a product of the school system here. So I had an opportunity to attend several schools, Mount Hebron, Wild Lake, and graduated from Howard High because my parents moved from one side of the Columbia to the other side of Columbia. Had a wonderful experience with drama and was in the drama club at Wild Lake High School. And because of my work in doing plays and being part of the drama club, I had an opportunity to go to college to get my BFA in theater. And so that all came out of my wonderful experience at Wild Lake High School. Went on and started teaching drama in Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and did some acting. And when I saw that arts is so healing in our communities, I worked with children, I worked with adults, I worked with the theater company called Living Stage in Washington, D.C., where we worked with incarcerated women and men, worked with disabilities centers all over um, Washington, D.C., did a lot of work with different programs and looked at some research around arts and healing. And I thought that it would be even better for me to get a degree in counseling psychology in order for me to work with trauma, and brought trauma and arts together in the work that I've been doing for the past 25 years. Um, Went out to San Francisco and was a dean of expressive arts, and also worked with the University of the California Institute of Integral Studies to bring diversity, equity, and inclusion within the university in my work as a counseling psychologist and expressive arts therapist. And so that's my career trajectory into the work of looking at equity and restorative practices, looking at all the things that surrounds the understanding of what racial equity is and inclusion and belonging. So I know that's a long answer to your question, but it gives me an opportunity to let you see how people get into this work. You know, what leads us to want to have a more equitable community and society.
Okay. Now, you have an inaugural position here at the Office of Human Rights and Equity. Can you tell us more about why this position was created and why equity is such a focus of both our office and of County Executive Calvin Ball?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm really honored to be here in this position. In 2021, um, there was an opportunity that this position opened up. And we changed the title of the Office of Human Rights to the Office of Human Rights and Equity. And County Executive Ball wanted to lead all the work that we're doing here in the county with an equity lens, and thought that a person with an understanding of what it means to look at disparities and inequities would be a perfect opportunity to add this position in the Office of Human Rights and Equity. And so for the past 3 years, almost four now, we have been gathering data internally and externally to see where we are as a county when it comes to really intentionally looking at equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so that's what I've been doing. And now we're so excited that the baseline of that work, we had a framework that came out of that. And the recommendation is to move forward with a strategic plan for the county around racial equity. And that's what we're doing presently. So there, we launched an internal survey with our staff and leaders within Howard County government, and their perceptions of what it means. What does racial equity mean? And now we have launched a community survey around racial equity that we're encouraging all our community members to take the survey. Let us know what you feel is part of making this a more equitable community in Howard County. And so, racial equity, people always ask me, what is the definition of racial equity? It is a process. It is a process for eliminating racial disparities in healthcare, in education, in employment. You know, how can we see a way for us to look at how people have been, um, I would say, impacted by racial inequities within their own lives, and looking at the lived experiences of people who feel that racism has been a part of discrimination, has been a part of stigma, has been a part of some of the trauma that they're experiencing. And we also want to improve outcomes for everyone. And so it's not just looking at disparities, but it's also looking at ways in which we can look at how we see race and equity as something that's going to give us the foundation to look at all the other aspects of where discrimination and harm could be impacting people's lives, whether they're disabled, whether they are from different languages and different ethnic groups and different places in the world. How can we make sure that everyone feels welcomed, included, and have a sense of belonging? So if we can tackle the concept of race, we can tackle the concept of everything that goes along with it.
Mhm. Now, what some people might not know is that our office doesn't use the acronym DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's, in fact, a very deliberate shift in our office towards centering equity at the beginning of that acronym using EDI. Can you share why equity over diversity, inclusion, belonging needs to be the central focus of the work that you're doing here at the office?
That's a great question. Well, especially here in Howard County. And I would say it is uniquely related to who we are as a county, why EDI is used, because we know we're very diverse. We're extremely diverse. People come here from all over the world because of the diversity that we have here in the county. Um, with knowing that, it's important for us to look at the next level of what it means to have a sense of belonging. And that is, how do we see equity as the center of our work? So we lead with an equitable lens. We lead with a lens that say, where's the fairness and how all the diverse people who live here, like the young and our elders, and people who coming from different countries, with different languages. How can we look at equity as the central aspect of how we see our services and how people feel that they're being served with an equitable lens, with a sense of caring and a sense of understanding and a sense of acknowledgement of who they are. So that's why we lead with an equity lens.
Why do you feel that Howard County is a good place to not only begin but continue this work?
Hmm. Well, I have a real deep investment in Howard County and particularly Columbia, Maryland, where I grew up. My parents chose to be here. And I think it's so important for young people to know why their parents chose to be here. A lot of parents wanted to have a better education for their children, and that's why they moved here. And they moved from across the country, they moved across the world, many people had. And so I think it's an investment in knowing that we have a very, very unique county even in Maryland, where people have really intentionally put down roots here because they feel like where all the other places where they lived in the world, any other place that they lived across the country, did not represent the kind of diversity and a sense of community that they felt that they have landed here. And I think that's why it's so important for us to see each other in ways where we can really appreciate what we have here.
Now, Howard County is storied. It has won awards. It is talked about as an excellent model of diversity, equity, inclusion quite often. Can you share what opportunities you see within Howard County to continue promoting equity? Because I don't know about you, but I don't really feel that we're there yet, despite all of the great richness we already have here.
Well, I think a real good testimony of who we are here is that we're willing to be self reflective, to look at ourselves, to say, we do um, appreciate the awards. We do understand why we get all the accolades from all over the place. But we also understand that many people in our community are still struggling. Many in our people in our community don't feel like they can afford to live here, or it's a struggle to be here. And they have so much to give us. Regardless of what background you come from, you come with a wealth of knowledge in so many other aspects. We have people that survived so many different events in their lives. Survival is a gift, and they have so much to teach us. And how can we survive? If anything happened to us here, we have that kind of knowledge that's right here for us that we have to take advantage of. And we have to see the wealth of every person's ability to be a contributor to making this a wonderful community. So, yes, we stand on the shoulders of great people who made this happen for us here, but we also have this critical opportunity to show the world that even with what we have, we're willing to look closely at ourselves to say we need to do more and we can do more. And that takes a lot of humility. That takes a sense of letting go of a lot of the ego. It takes a moment of us saying, I really care not just about myself, but I care about others who have to stand in the food line because of food insecurity. People who in our community that are homeless. We have to look around us to see, where does joy happen when we care about each other. So I'm all about joy and happiness and health and wellness because I started my career looking at health and wellness. And when people feel like they're welcomed, they feel better about themselves. When they feel like people see them and are open to listening to diverse perspectives, people feel like, wow, I'm living in a place where I don't have to hide who I am. I can come full. I can show up 100%. And that takes a community to make us feel that way. I know we have that community here.
So, with that incredible richness of community, can you speak more how you're including those voices with your upcoming racial equity community perception survey?
Well, we are encouraging people, everyone, even internally with our staff and our leaders, to see how the survey and the questions that we're asking about the perceptions of racial equity, how do we infuse it in our hiring practices? How do we infuse it in our policies and procedures? How do we embed it in our mission statements and our strategic plans that we have in Howard County government? And how can we see that when we have an equity lens, it makes us ask this question: are we servicing everyone according to their unique needs? Are we going to the community and asking the community, tell us what you need to feel that you're getting you have a sense of belonging and a sense of inclusion? How can we help you with that? When you ask that question, then you are opening yourself to say, we need to have more voices that can help us move in that direction. We're not the experts. Our community people are the experts of their lived experiences. And so having the community also answering these questions in the survey is also very critical to us because we're being led by the community. The community will teach us what to do. And we also have focus groups because quantitative data is not going to get you all the answers that you need. You need to have qualitative information, and that is asking people to tell us their story, asking people to let us know where have you felt a sense of exclusion in your daily operations here? Where have you felt included? Because we want to look at both sides. We want to look at what brings people joy and what also brings you a sense of feeling like there's something that needs to be done for people to really see you. So we're doing some wonderful focus groups with the African diaspora residents here, with our Latin American diaspora residents, with our elders, with our emerging adults, our young people at Howard Community College. We want to know, what is your experience here? And how can an equity lens um, help you have a better quality of life?
Now, we titled this webinar A Call to Action. Can you speak more about why you're putting that call directly out to the community to participate in this initiative?
Well, I'm looking forward to the questions that are going to be posed to me about, what does it mean to make this actionable? We have a lot of data here. We collect data a lot in Howard County. And there's a lot of wonderful organizations looking at racial equity right now, just as we are, which makes this a collective endeavor. But I also would say that it's important for people to know that this work is not going to happen just with data being on the shelf. Because I think the respect and being equitable is letting people know that if you answer the survey and if you participate in focus groups, we want to make sure that what you shared will be delivered when we put the data together, when we aggregate the data, when we take a look at how we can see where the patterns are of disparities that are here with us. Data should not sit on the shelf. Data needs to be actionable. And what does action look like? It looks like that we are going to be giving back this information to the community so we can be accountable. Accountability is part of this work. And so when people see that we are actually having a racial equity policies and procedures, when they actually see that we're hiring in a way that really brings in all types of people within our workforce, when they see with their own eyes the way that they're treated, because equity also means that you're looking and respecting people, who they are. So there's no judgment. When they really see a difference in how people are being treated, how voices are being included, and we measure this because everything's around measurement and accountability, people will see a shift. And it may not happen in a year, because I said in the beginning, this is a process. It will happen within, we'll take a look at the first year of this. We have a 3-year strategic plan that we're looking at starting in 2025. And so what happens after the first year? How do we check ourselves to see, are we doing these things? What happens in the second year? What happens in the third year? And so it's all around being transparent and being accountable in this work that we're talking about. And everyone is included in this. No one is left out of this process. Racial equity helps us to understand that if we can look race in its face, when we really see that it has caused a lot of harm for many, many people, that we all can be responsible to make sure that we're not causing harm anymore. We're not perpetuating this, even if it's unconscious, that we're more intentional about how we're treating our neighbors, our students, our teachers, our police officers. Everyone wants to be treated with respect and dignity. And that's what the movement is towards.
Okay, thank you, Denise. And what a perfect transition for me to introduce our next guest. So we have with us Willie Flowers, who is the president of the County NAACP. So I'm going to bring him on now for the next stage of this conversation.
Lovely. Hi, Willie. Where are you? We'll wait for him to get situated in. But if there's any questions while we're waiting, I'll take a question. Liv, do we have any questions from the audience? I see that Willie may be having problems getting on. So while we're waiting, I just want to, yes, hey, Liv.
Hi. So it looks like we're having a few technical difficulties, but while we work on that, I can go ahead and share the bio of our guest with our audience.
Please.
Willie Flowers is the Chief of Strategic Initiatives for the Maryland Office of the Public Defender. In that capacity, he works in the areas of federal, state, and local legislative affairs. He also serves as a liaison for labor relations and implementation of the MOPD strategic vision. And he's a specialist in grassroots lobbying and resource development. He formerly served as the executive director of the Park Heights Community Health Alliance in Baltimore, Maryland, where he founded a food justice program called Urban Oasis and Up Park Heights Community Mindfulness, which was designed to introduce mindfulness practice as an outlet to promote inner peace and love as an organizing tool. While with the agency, he guided programs in the areas of community and economic development, health access, and overall family support for those in need. As former NAACP Maryland State President and currently Howard County Branch President, Willie advocates to make technology a key social justice issue by promoting grassroots access, equity for seamless exposure to promote workforce development and entrepreneurship to all residents of Maryland. He's also guiding mental health advocacy in a post-pandemic America that incorporates reading, writing, communing with nature, and mindfulness practice as solutions to all families and communities. Additionally, his work includes raising awareness about the negative effects of the crime bills of the 1990s and the unified effort required to lessen the pain and amplifying what it will take to heal American communities. He's a historian and collector of memorabilia of the American Civil Rights Movement, a native of Alabama, and a graduate of Troy University. He's also an avid runner, writer, and urban farmer. So hopefully we will be able to get this very storied, very exciting guest on for you to be able to hear. But in the meantime, Denise, did you have something you want to add?
No, I'm excited to have Willie join us in the conversation, um, and to really add to what this work means here in Howard County, because I know Willie's been doing this work for many, many years.
All right. Willie, are you able to hear us and speak to us? Okay, go ahead and talk. We should be able to hear you then. All right, so it looks like we might be continuing to have some technical difficulties. So
Hmm.
I will go ahead and turn my camera off and start to try to troubleshoot that. Denise, while we're waiting, could you share with us what you envision a racially equitable society to look like here in Howard County?
Hmm. That's a great question. I would love to pose that to Willie once Willie comes on board. But I'd like to pose that to you. Um, if we are doing the work intentionally to make sure that we are embracing all the different people, all the different experiences, all the different, I would say, all the values that are coming into our county from many different people. If we are really doing that in a way where everyone feels like, they can show up, um, they will get the health care they need without feeling like people are not understanding them. Um, they can receive the education that they deserve without any stigma or stereotyping. When people really feel that there is an intention to make things better, because we know that we're not perfect. And so when we really do the work, and that means all of us, in all the capacities of leadership that we have, in the capacities of being parents, in the capacities of being principals and teachers, and in our capacity of in the religious frame of the work that we're doing here. Are we leading with intention to really care and see each other? Are we open to listening when we receive feedback that we're not? Are we open and not defensive when people say to us, we didn't have an interpreter at this event? Um, it wasn't accessible for me to go to this event. Um, when we hear people say, um, I can't travel in a way that really is conducive to my work. I need to have better transportation. Are we listening? And not just listening to be listening, but listening to say, I will take what you shared with me and I will um, provide ways that we can resolve and have outcomes that are better for you. That's what I envision when we really are better listeners, that when we really take it back to our offices and our teams and say, we need to be better and we need to be more open to seeing how our budgets are being allocated. Um, those are the questions that we have to pose to ourselves.
All right, Denise, it looks like we have a question in the chat. I'm going to highlight that on the screen for you. How did COVID affect Howard County and access to resources for its communities?
Well, COVID was a wake up call, not just for Howard County, but all over the world, of the inequities in the healthcare system, in the inequities of how people had to continue to work, even when COVID was out there, when we were hunkered down. A lot of people could not afford to stay in their homes. And so it really caused deaths to a lot of our family members. And when you look at the proportionality of who was impacted, it was people of color. And so that's the reality of what happens when you take a look at the statistics and data. It shows you, who's the most impacted by a lot of the, uh, the harms that's been happening. And COVID uh, was a tremendous wake up call. And it just didn't start, when COVID happened. People have been feeling that way for years, that access to healthcare wasn't there for them. Culturally responsive healthcare was not there for them. And so I'm hoping that we've learned something from COVID. And now that we're several years post COVID, what have we learned and how we are applying some of the information that we've learned from COVID?
All right. And we have another question in the chat. How can taking the survey make a change in my day to day life?
Mm. Well, I hope that if you take the survey, it'll help you become a little self reflective, um, uh, to help you answer those questions very thoroughly, not to rush through the survey, but to take your time. I took the survey, and it enabled me to take a look at how I see other people. It helped me to be more self-reflective in the ways in which I may be not understanding and not someone that's really listening. And so taking the survey will help you see your way of how you're operating, especially around the whole concept of racial equity, making sure that you are not just saying hello to your neighbors at Safeway, but you're actually being active in how you are part of, school boards, how you're being active when it comes to working in your, you know, particular communities. How are you active to making the change to help people living in your community feel better about themselves? And so I would hope that it would lead you to being more um, involved and seeing that whatever role you play, whether you are a parent in the neighborhood, whether you are part of an organization, that you can see that these questions that I posed earlier, who's at the table, who's not at the table, who are we serving, who are we not serving, where do we need to really learn more about the community, how do we go out and do more outreach, how do we um, commune with people that are not like us. Those are questions that'll it'll ask you to think about, and that will just make your life so much better when you know that you are really understanding the power of community.
Mm. And in addition to those personal and intrinsic benefits, what structural benefits can people anticipate their participation in the survey eventually leading to in the county that they live in?
Hmm. Because a lot of, we talk about racism as if it's interpersonal only. It's not just one on one. It's in our policies and our procedures. That's the structural and institutional aspect of how a lot of harm is still being perpetuated. How are we interviewing in a way that really calls for us to be open minded about the criteria that we're setting? And it's not lowering standards. I've always heard that, no one's lowering standards when you're opening yourself up to really being open to seeing so many different ways to look at that position, and ways in which people come with many different, I would say, strengths to make that position and make that job even better. So when we look at structural and institutional racism, it's ways in which we haven't really thought about how race has, eliminated so many people from positions, from opportunities, um, from a better quality of life just because of the color of someone's skin. So looking at unconscious bias, we have a lot of those trainings that are here. We all hold bias, and how can we be more receptive to learning something that's going to help us unlearn some of the things that we've been doing. That's the boldness of this work, is to be open to unlearning and to be open to relearning, and re-envisioning what it really means to see people that are different from ourselves, and to respect them and to really honor what they have to offer all of us.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat. Who is analyzing the data and when their analyses be shared with the public?
Of course. Well, you can't be equitable if you're not going to be transparent. That's part of equity. Transparency is important. We're working with a consultant, the Executive Learning Lab, TEL, is working with us to gather the data. And they will be aggregating the data and creating a report for Howard County by the end of this year. And before the report goes, into a final draft, we will be sharing it and doing more focus groups to share the data, to let people know what we've learned, because it's not going to be a secret to anyone, and how we would like to move forward with some specific goals and objectives for the next 3 years.
Okay. We have a chat question. Being so close to Baltimore, how are EDI efforts affected by being so close to such a big city? Is it good to be close to more resources, or does it draw resources away from Howard County?
That's a really good question. I think we're in a very wonderful kind of regional situation where we're between Washington and Baltimore City. And we're not taking anything away from, and what we are doing. I know we had a Humanity Matters conference a couple months ago where we hosted Office of Human Rights and Equity hosted a conference to look at humanity, and we asked other jurisdictions to be part of the conversation. So it's not about taking away, it's about collectively doing this work together and learning from what's happening in Montgomery County that can really support the work that we're doing. And they're coming to look at us, what's going on in Howard County. So equity doesn't mean looking at each other in a way where we're competing. We have internal resources that will help us as we move forward to be more equitable as we look at how we allocate resources into to the many different areas that we're going to be looking at, and to benchmark it across the country, to see what other cities are doing to make their cities more equitable, to look at how they are looking at outcomes to promote a more inclusive community. So we're benchmarking many different places, going to conferences, participating and presenting at conferences. Um, we're doing a lot of work to help us be more informed as well. And again, I'm saying this, even more critically, it's not competition. This work, equity work, is collective. It is sharing. It is understanding that, one person can't be responsible. I'm not going to be the only one responsible for this work. We have to look at our whole community, and to see that we're all part of this interconnected plan to see each other in a way that's more caring and more transparent in how we're doing this work.
Okay, we have a few more chat questions and we will get to them before we wrap, but I do want to try for the second time to see if we can bring on Willie Flowers.
Oh, I hope so.
I do hope so too.
It
Hello.
was well worth the wait.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you.
How you doing, Dr. Boston?
Oh, you forced me to just talk a lot about racial equity, but
Well,
I don't mind. But I'm here for you to talk to us about the powerful work that you've been doing in this community. So proud of you. And I approached you because I really felt that you had a lot to share. And people already know your work because they know you. You don't hold back.
yeah. Well, I thank you. I'm very humbled by your statements, but I certainly want to commend you because the work you do is so very important. Just to spin on what you said about equity being, equal and shared is important right now more than any time. As you know, we've talked about the fact that I'm from the state of Alabama, state where they literally banned all DEI funding, period. And it's the last state that you would think would do something like that because they are in so much need for so many reasons. And but the one thing I can say about them is that they are consistent because in the early 1900s they defunded or didn't fund public education, and after World War II, when they did some basic level of intelligence tests, Alabama, everybody from Alabama, black people and white people, scored lower than anybody in the country. So they wouldn't let them participated in World War II because they at that point they wanted to make sure that people had sense enough to use a gun, and we know what happened after that with Alabama's opposition to everything pertaining to desegregation, civil rights, and that put Alabama on the map. And so it's no surprise that today in 2024 they have taken the position of defunding DEI anywhere in the state.
Mm.
So it shows you that the type of basically vitriol, racism, whatever you call it, is going to take more than legislation to change people's heart. And so that's where we are. And again, Alabama is not the only state, but that's where part of my heart is, and it's so very disappointing to read about this nonsense. And let me add here that Alabama since 2020, I don't know if they've been keeping this record, but more people have died. They have the reality that more people have died in the state of Alabama than who were born.
Mm.
And this is something I picked up on in reading AL.com, and you can track it from 2020. I think I stopped in 2023, but they've been consistent, and that should be a public health crisis.
Yes.
Beyond talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, you should want the entire state to live, but but this type of thing is accepted because it's usually cases it's Black, brown, and poor people who are feeling the effects of this, and they can't see the future. So I'm glad that you're doing the work that you're doing in Howard County, and I hope that you can extend it so that that type of work and this dialogue can amplify to everybody else in the country.
Well, I'm happy that you share with us what's happening in another state, because a lot of times we lose sight that when we're living here in this bubble, we think that everything is, what we're doing here. But we have to realize that how can we be a model for that state? How can Howard County be a model to states across the country who are still resistant to seeing the power of how community really needs to work together for health and wellness, for a sense of reciprocity for people to give back to each other? How do you think Howard County can really make a difference?
I I I can't even. I mean, I wish that it was that easy, but it's clearly tougher than that. I mean, the kind of the I guess the pieces of the basic villages in Howard County have not really been duplicated in other counties in the state of Maryland.
Mhm.
In with the part that they work, there are some challenges, mind you, based on everything, attitudes and individuals who really don't want to carry the vision. But I wish there was a way. I can't even advise it on how that could happen, but I wish it could be at least draw out the good pieces of it and use that to change other communities. One thing that I could say that is something that, it's a challenge in Howard County and people are not always happy about APFO, adequate public facilities ordinances, but it doesn't, nobody, but nobody's always happy about APFO, but in other counties, Prince George's County specifically, I don't think they even consider ordinances there because they have communities coming up every day. You hear the information about schools being overcrowded. You hear the information about them building 6 schools at the same time, and that's a sign that something is not going right in a county that large, and it continues to get larger.
And I think we are fortunate to have people like you in this community that just brings a lot of understanding around the integral aspects of where disparities lie here. Um, we held a focus group where we had a couple of our elders who've been here for over 40 years. We're talking about, they don't want to disappear from here. They don't want to not be included
Right.
in what the decision making is, because we have a lot of people who started here, and a lot of communities that have 3 and 4 generations in Howard County. How do we begin to have conversations across these differences? What's your
I
feeling
mean,
around?
I think it's basic level community organizing. We have to return to that. Even with the village structure that I think has its benefits, but some people are lost in that shuffle, lost in that, and that's something that that's when that's identified. I think we have to literally put people on the street so they can be pulled in. And housing is an extreme issue here that I think it could be resolved with the resources we have in Howard County. I don't know if they've been addressed, and particularly when it comes down to the reality of the enormous increase in rents since COVID. All these issues are being articulated, amplified, but there's always a lack of political will to tackle them. And if we want to keep a balance of this, Rouse's vision of having a CEO and a janitor in the same neighborhood, we've got to work to do that. And it has to be a combined effort. And like I said, it has to be organizing so that people can not only just come together for the issue, but
Yes.
who can come together to see how other people live and the support that they need to survive and live in this county.
And I think we've had a lot of those kind of courageous and brave conversations at the tables here. And the next step is, where do we go beyond the conversation?
Right,
You
and
know,
that's like I said, that's where the follow up and the organizing comes. I mean, like I said, I don't think anybody would disagree that housing and housing affordability is a problem here. And I will be the first to say that we should not have homeless people, people without shelter in Howard County, but that reality exists, and I think it can be resolved with the resources that we have. We just have to have the political will to do it. And everywhere I go, housing is an issue, and I certainly don't think that our elders or our seniors should be costed out of their homes or their lives when we have so many resources. So it just requires the political will to face it, and celebrate when we are successful at it. But there doesn't seem to be consistent political will to analyze, to identify the problem, and then to study it and
mhm.
activate a solution, whether that solution is political or corporate.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of boldness to
Mhm.
be bold to say that these are the issues and concerns that are coming up from the survey. That we're reaching out to people, so we're not just taking the survey and putting it out there. We're being intentional about who has the survey in their hands, because if we're looking at populations and communities who have not been able to really share their concern, we won't know. And so if you're just putting a survey out there for people who are, typically answer surveys, you're not going to get the full story. The full story has to come from people who are impacted by what you just stated.
Right,
And how can we respect them by listening to their stories and say, we've got to do something about it?
right,
And I think that's where the boldness needs to come into, because there's so many people impacted, Willie, that we can't even imagine proportionally. We have to take a look at, how many folks out here are unhoused,
hmm
are standing in food lines. How many of our young people don't feel good about school?
right. And those are just the outliers. And I guess what I encouraged by what you're presenting, if there's an equity mindset, that's what you don't just look at the issue in front of you. You look at what caused it and how many other people can be in the same situation within a matter of time. So
Right.
this upstreaming thing should be a part of not a political mindset, but an equity mindset, so that we can stop it at the source. And clearly, if we continue to have and continue to see homeless people, it breaks my heart when I see tents in Howard County, or tents anywhere, but specifically in Howard County. I just, I just believe that that can be resolved, and I certainly believe that we have the resources here to do it.
We certainly do. We have the social resources, we have the financial resources, we have the capacity, we have great minds here that we can do this work. And the work is being done in many counties all over the country. Seattle is at the forefront of this work. So it's not impossible. A lot of work is happening in Texas right now, surprisingly. There's an area in Texas that are really on the case when it comes to racial equity and creating a racial equity community that's focused on all the different areas. Even emerging adults, our young adults between the ages of 18 and 30, are getting involved in saying, we want a generation, we want to be the generation that really sees another way of living. And so we want to reach out to them in the survey too, in the focus groups. We want to hear, what does it mean for you to live here in Howard County? Do we have enough for you to do? Do you feel like you're getting employment once you graduate from school or from college? Will you come back to live? A lot of our young people grew up here, but will they come back to really live here and have families here? Do they
Right.
see an example of why they should come back? And so we should be thinking about those things as well.
I agree.
What would you like to share with folks listening to us this evening? And you came in, and it's a reason why you're here.
There's a reason. Um, I think that this subject of when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, it is something we have to get nestled in to accept. The and then attitude after this attack on it is different than it was when we were gaining ground with really bringing people to the table. I do think that there is probably a responsibility solely of the local communities to craft and to design what diversity, equity, inclusion means. I mean, I see in Howard County that it's kind of in silos. I know that your leadership has a dedicated focus on expanding diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm very proud of that. I celebrate that. You have the same reality in a few agencies. The Your agency and also the library system has their effort. So if silos can be kind of I guess broken, and these systems can merge, I think we would gain a lot more ground. Not to say that y'all not doing anything things together, but
Yes.
they're always those two organizations stand out. There was movement with Howard County Public Schools in that direction, but I think they were under some mandate to do it. So I think that there should be some merger of all these sources, so the attitude for the entire community should be one of inclusion.
Thank you. I love the idea of interconnectedness, that we want the same things.
Right,
And how do we do it together? And how do we model that for our
right,
community?
exactly. So there could be things that work in one agency that doesn't work in the other, and that type of thing appeals because it means less work and support and you know and less competition, so that we can all because in some cases you're serving the same people.
Yes, we are. We're serving the same people. And the people are looking for us to be better stewards. I mean, they're looking for us to really model what it really means to care about one another. And that's across agencies, it's across organizations. Um, we have some brilliant people living here in Howard County. You're one of them.
Yeah, thank you, and
And
so are you.
oh,
And
we need to appreciate each other. We need to uplift each other. That's what our community really can benefit from. And I know I came here with Rouse. I was part of that dream. And my mother and father came here under that kind of vision. And they lived, 40 years here, and felt very um, welcomed in a very interesting, unique way, because they came from Baltimore and they brought their Baltimore spirit with them. They never left Baltimore behind, but they
Right.
felt like being here gave them a sense of um, living in that village you talked about.
Right.
That village was an
And
important aspect of my parents' lives.
right. And I think that everybody has that to some extent. I do see that, there is this sense based on the community. There might not always be the connection that we need because everybody's trying to go to work, everybody's trying to go to school,
Yeah.
and there might not be the connection overall for these celebrations. One thing that we attempt to do with the community garden is to use community gardening as recreation, so that people come together and we do whatever we can to break bread together,
Mm.
share food together, and to just create a new community. And so that type of thing again takes work. I mean, that's one of the hardest ones,
Yes.
but it takes work to do. But I see other communities that are developed. Whether you're talking
Mhm.
about, people who play baseball, sports and athletics are tremendous to bringing people together. And I love to hear about book clubs. All these
Mm.
pieces are ways that people come together. And I think that we should just magnify that type of thing.
Well, I'm so glad you brought in the garden, the community garden, because that's the highlight of your life. And I think it's a good metaphor to end on. If anybody has any questions out there, but how do we grow a community that really cares about each other? From the west to the south to the east to the north, we have a community of people that want to be here, but how do we be here together? And I think that whole metaphor of growth and seeds and and flowering is part of the work of
Right. And just building a foundation, a nutrient rich foundation. Because if you don't have
fertile,
that, you're not
fertile
going to eat.
ground. That's right.
Right. And you don't want to make any mistakes.
Wow. And if
So,
we do make mistakes, because we will, we know that we still have each other. And
right,
if you build that relational model, you'll have each other.
right.
So, Liv, do we have any questions? I know it's at the top of the hour and we have talked a lot, but is there any pressing question you think we need to answer before we close this evening? Should white people take the survey, or is it just for people of color? Boy, I like that question. I think that's a great question because I get that question all the time. Um, yes, every single person living in Howard County should take the survey. We learn when we're asked questions about the lived experiences of other people. We learn when we understand that we can't be in this world alone. We learn how to be in communion with one another. When we take a step in a direction of understanding another human being. So, no, we're not leaving anyone out. Equity work doesn't leave anybody out. It includes every single voice, every opinion, every perspective, every lived experience. So, I encourage you, if this is a white person asking the question, to share that with your family, to share that with your colleagues and your networks, that we're not a community unless we're all part of the solution. So I appreciate the question. And Willie, do you want to add anything to that question?
No, I think that you hit the nail on the head. You know, I, that's what diversity, equity, inclusion is. It's not just racial stuff. It's also mindset. So whether your mindset is good or bad, you can be influenced by the good if you participate And in this situation, when we're talking about, understanding the views of our white brothers and sisters, that's beneficial as well because they might, just as innocent as the question, they may not understand the details, and they can get the knowledge that they need in that regard. And quite frankly, a lot of Black folks need the
Mhm.
information as well.
For sure. So this is not a class thing, you know. It's we're looking at breaking down barriers, and we're breaking down silos, and we're breaking down discrimination and stereotyping and biases. We're looking at all those areas that's been difficult and saying we're ready for this work. We're ready to do this work. And you're not alone if you're a white person doing this work. There's a lot of people, white people in Colombia, that's been doing this work for years. And to connect with those folks that are doing the work. And so I look forward to you taking the survey, and I want to hear your response. And we'll move forward together. As an office, what are your greatest success struggles, and how can we best support you as a community? Well, I'm going to leave on that note. That's a good question. Our success is that we have a county executive that saw this position as critical to the work in making sure that we see each other as a community, that we respect each other's differences, and that we really hold ourselves accountable when it comes to doing the work. Have we made a lot of success around it? This is a process. I think the success is for all of us to be able to talk about it. Willie just said in his hometown, people can't talk about it. So a success is being able to say this in a way where you don't feel that your life is at stake. This is not an easy thing to talk about. A lot of people have died talking about this. We stand on a lot of shoulders. The struggles are that if we continue to be complacent, complicit, if we continue to be silenced, when we know that there's so many things we can do to make a change, we won't change. We will stand stagnant in a place where we know that we deserve to do more. I would love to see an award for Howard County about being the most racially equitable county in the country. That would be a wonderful award. And for other counties to say if they can do it with all the awards that they have received, and they're looking at themselves to say it's not enough, then we can do it.
Right. And I'll add to that, if Howard County can't do it, nobody can do it.
Mm,
So I think we're closer to have the ingredients for it. It's going to take work. It's going to take love, a whole lot of love.
mm.
But if anybody can do it, we can.
I agree. I take my hat off to you. Mr. Willie Flowers, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. Let's continue to do this work